What do we need for a network connection?
To establish a network connection, we need a software endpoint called a socket.
What is a socket?
A socket is a communication endpoint that enables data exchange between computers or processes over a network. It consists of an IP address and a port number.
What steps are involved in establishing a network connection?
The client computer creates a socket to initiate the connection. The server computer listens on a socket to accept incoming connections.
What does the client computer do to initiate a network connection?
The client computer creates a socket. It specifies the network protocol, IP4 or IP6, and the transport protocol, TCP or UDP. Then, the client uses the connect function call to establish a connection to the server. The function requires the server's IP address and port number as parameters.
What is the role of the server computer in initiating a network connection?
The server computer waits for incoming connections by listening on a socket. It first creates a socket, specifying the network and transport protocols. The server then binds the socket to a specific IP address and port using the bind function. After that, it calls the listen function to start listening for incoming connections.
Why is it important to bind an IP address to a socket?
Machines can have multiple network interfaces with different IP addresses. By binding to a specific IP address, the kernel ensures that packets received on that interface are delivered to the associated application.
What is the purpose of binding a port when creating a socket?
Binding a port allows the kernel to identify the application that should receive incoming TCP packets based on the specified port number in the TCP header.
Why does a server need to listen on a port first?
The port acts as a communication endpoint, allowing multiple processes or services to operate on the same server, each associated with a unique port number. This enables the server to handle different types of network requests concurrently, directing the traffic to the appropriate application based on the specified port.
What happens when a server listens on a port?
When a server is in the listening state, it actively waits for client connections on the specified port. It can be thought of as a door waiting for clients to knock on it.
How does the server know if a client wants to establish a connection?
The server uses the accept function, which blocks and waits until a client connection request arrives. When a client attempts to establish a connection with the server, the accept function retrieves that connection from the kernel's queue and returns a new socket dedicated to that client's connection.
What happened while server accepting client TCP connection?
The server's kernel maintains two queues for each socket, the TCP half-open connection queue for incomplete connections, in the syn_RCVD state the TCP fully established connection queue for completed connections, in the established state. The accept function retrieves a connected socket from the kernel's queue and returns it to the application for further data transmission. This connected socket is different from the listening socket and represents an established connection between the client and the server.
How about the client? Does it only have one socket per connection?
Typically, a client has one socket for a particular network connection.
How do the client and server exchange data after the connection is established?
Both the client and server can use the read and write functions to read from and write to the connected socket for data transmission.